Good afternoon, everybody. This is episode 4 of The King and the Wizard Talk Cheese and Wine. So, how are you, Ian?
Not too bad, thanks, Stephen. It's been a busy week. I'm very much looking forward to getting this, sitting down and taking some time to get through some lovely cheese and wine.
Yeah, this should be good. We're doing this on a Sunday afternoon for a change, which is a bit different, but it's quite a nice way to spend a Sunday. It's good.
Yeah. My children have been told not to come into the room, so hopefully we can uninterrupted.
That's good. Mine are safely ensconced in front of the TV watching something on Disney, so hopefully we'll get the same at this end of things. Let's see how we go. So this time round, we have got 3 cheeses and 2 wines to talk through. Perhaps, Ian, you want to just tell us a bit about the 2 wines?
Yes, so starting off, we have a lovely traditional Sancerre, 2017. So when we talk about Sancerre, we are thinking about a quintessential Sauvignon Blanc. Now, normally you'd think about Sauvignon Blancs and you wouldn't think about aging them. I think if you buy the right one, you can age it just a touch. And I wouldn't want to age them much more than this. I think this is about as far as they go. You want to keep some freshness in there. It's from a particularly good winemaker called Claude Riffaut. And we'll see how that goes. It's when we talk about Sancerre, quite often we'll be thinking about goat's cheese. So let's see how we go today. The second wine, going back to Italy again, this is called Cupole di Trinoro, so it's 2013. Number of reasons for bringing this along. Firstly, thinking back to the first tasting we did, we had a bottle of wine, a red wine called Passo Pistiaro from Etna. This is made by the same winemaker, a guy called Andrea Franchetti. And this is a very Italian thing to do. You know, you've had these old families that have made wines for years and they've branched out. So Franchetti branched out, started making wine on Etna. But traditionally they were a Tuscany house, a Chianti house. And then, like a lot of people in Chianti, they've struggled with the laws in Italy around winemaking and being restricted with them. And they've gone off to make wines that they want to make. And instead of having the top designation of DOCG, Denominazione Originale Controlla Garantita, they've just gone for the IGT, Indicazione Geografica Tipica, which, you know, traditionally is table wine and a lesser wine. But they've come out, you may have heard the phrase super Tuscans, which is a very overused phrase. Franchetti is famous for making a wine called Tenuta di Trinoro, and it falls very firmly in that super Tuscan label. It costs, you know, the Tenuta di Trinoro 2013 is probably going to cost you something like about £150 a bottle.
Right, so it's not cheap then.
It's to show that second wines can be worth a look. So we've got the second wine. This is the baby brother, Cupole di Trinoro. It's the same blend of wines, grapes, but it doesn't cost anything like that. And it's one of those wines that I just buy every year because you know it's going to be good.
Excellent.
And one of the reasons it's good is it's a blend. And like a lot of super Tuscans, and the reason they're IGTs is they borrow grapes that are not traditionally Italian. In this case, they've gone to Bordeaux. So you've got the traditional Bordeaux grapes in there of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, and with one more, Petit Verdot is in there as well. So this is an Italian take on a Bordeaux variety. It's Franchetti again. We're showing a second wine, and also I think it goes quite nicely against the Sancerre. Being a Sauvignon Blanc, we have a lot of Cabernet Sauvignon in there together. So we should have that Sauvignon aromatic theme carrying over from white to red.
Excellent. So 2 wines that should sit very nicely with each other by the sounds of things. I was reading up on the red earlier in the week when you sent me the details through, and I've been really interested to try it. So, great stuff. Well, I'll just briefly run through the 3 cheeses, and then we'll start eating and drinking. So we've got 2 British and 1 French cheese today. We've got the first one is the Yorkshire Fiore, which is a Sardinian-style hard pecorino. Made in Yorkshire by a Sardinian guy, Mario, who we had his Leeds Blue, I think, on one of the previous episodes.
I remember. Yes.
Yeah, this is sort of 3 to 4 months aged, really lovely. Great example of a sort of an Italian pecorino style cheese. We've got the other British cheese is this amazing blue cheese from Northumberland called Darling Blue, which has made a return to our counter in the last couple of weeks. One of my cheesemongering team mounted a bit of a campaign to get it back on the counter. We rotate our cheeses fairly regularly to keep it interesting and fun. And we had it on a while ago, and she kept saying, "Can we get Darling Blue back on, because it's really, really good." We hadn't been able to get it for a while, but now it's back available. Like, yeah, let's have it because it's really lovely cheese. The third cheese we're going to have is the French little Chaource, which is the Camembert style soft cheese, which again is sort of a newish addition to us in our counter here. But I think this will be an interesting one to try, particularly with the Sancerre. I know I sort of resisted the obvious link of a sort of goat's cheese, but we'll see. We'll see how these pair up.
I think when we had the Ticklemore a while ago, I think thinking back to that, the Ticklemore on the Sancerre would be a classic choice. But let's see if we can. Interesting.
See what we can do with this. Yeah, excellent stuff. So we're going to dive in with the Sancerre first of all. Okay. So first thing is in the glass. You can see it's got a little bit more colour than you might expect. It's still, not screaming out that it's got oak shavings or anything else in there. It won't have been oaked at all. But it's got that beautiful Sauvignon Blanc nose. It's herbaceous. There's a bit of grass, a little bit of pepper on there. A little stony, perhaps a little bit of asparagus. But it's just dialed down a little bit because it's got that little bit of age in the bottle. Yeah, it's quite subtle, isn't it? It's not punching you in the face. And when I taste this, I'm expecting it still to be very refreshing, good crisp acidity. Sauvignons, whether it's Cabernet Sauvignon or Sauvignon Blanc, always hang on to their acidity. I'm expecting it to be fresh, but again, just a little bit smoother than you'd normally, not fighting its way out of the glass as much as a fresh, new Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah, it is quite smooth, isn't it? It is. And with this one, yeah, you have those classic Sauvignon flavors there. The pepper's there, the asparagus is there. There's some floral elements, but you're just starting to get some of the flavors from from a bit more heat, a bit more warmth in there. There's a little bit of green fruit, green apple, lemon coming through. A little bit of gooseberry as well coming through on that, just giving it a little some more depth and flavor. I'm definitely getting appley flavors. We've just started to pick some of the apples from a tree in our garden, and it's bringing me the same flavors that I'm getting from those. It's lovely. Yeah, and again, like as you'd expect for a Sauvignon, the winemaker hasn't done too much to this. There's no oakiness. It will have been fermented in steel barrels. Won't have seen any time in oak at all. No stirring of the lees. You want to keep it fresh, protect that aromatic nature of it, and wouldn't have allowed it to go through malolactic conversion. So Sauvignons are always the winemaker is trying to protect them from all that thing and keep it as fresh as possible. Yeah, much of that floral flavour to come through as possible. Very good. So that's about really kind of just keeping it, not touching it, not mucking about with it, just letting it do its thing. Yeah, and protecting it as much as you can. So I'd rather like we do with some of the softer cheeses where some like brie, the handmade bries, and that the curds are very, very delicate, and they're very carefully hand ladled into molds. Because if you use a machine to do it, it's just going to smash them to bits, and you're going to lose texture, you're going to lose flavour. Right. You're going to end up with something that's quite uniform and quite boring. But by taking that extra care, it just seems to be what makes all of the difference. Yeah. Right. I'm excited to jump in with a bit of cheese. So let's jump in with a bit of the Chaource. So this is cow's milk cheese from the Champagne region of France. Comes as a little sort of 250 gram little drum. Yeah, I love the label on it. Yeah, it's beautifully presented, isn't it? Yeah. So this should have, and this is actually a really good example of this being good condition. It should be. This is the camera here. Slightly soft under the rind, and then just a bit crumbly in the centre still. And the white rind it's Penicillium candidum, which makes the white rind on these kind of cheeses. And it's got the kind of. Sorry. It's good for you. Yeah, it's very good for you. Yeah, even better for you than it would have been without it. So this is an old French cheese. This has been made since the Middle Ages in France. And there are some artisan producers, there are some more industrial scale producers of this as well. It has an AOC protection on it, which it got in 1970. So it has to be made in a certain way. It has to be a lactic coagulation. There we go. There's the label.
Yeah, the appellation d'origine protégée.
Yeah, that's it.
Protection.
It has to be, I love this on the protection, there also says, the drainage of the cheese must be slow and spontaneous. I love that. So in other words, they don't press it, they don't muck about it, they let time and gravity do its thing to drain the weight from the curds. It's a similar sort of recipe to a brie. It's aged for between about 2 and 4 weeks, and generally they're eaten quite young.
Ooh. That's I mean, tasting the cheese by itself, you know, when I look at it, I'm starting to think about softer cheeses like bries, but it has got a beautiful chalkiness in the when you're eating the whole thing. I guess it's coming from the skin, much more so than I'd expect from a brie.
Yeah, it's quite a different thing, isn't it?
And the weight of it on my it's much lighter as well. It's running away. It looks like it could almost pour away if you let it warm up enough.
Yeah, it could do. I mean, we actually had a piece of this at home that my wife was photographing for her job, which involves that kind of thing for cheese. And she left it out on the counter to get some nice photos. Came back to it a bit later, and it had literally almost fallen out of its rind.
Yeah,
so beautiful.
Yeah, it almost feels like really thick cream on your tongue.
Yeah, it does got that kind of texture, doesn't it? And there's there's a bit of bitterness there in the flavour, I think, as well.
Yes, and a little bit of saltiness as well.
Yeah,
I think that saltiness. When I took a sip of white wine with it had I think it gives the wine a huge lift.
Yeah,
and
it does, doesn't it?
Direction, but actually the wine starts to focus in on that chalkiness on the cheese rind as well. So it brings out some other flavors in the cheese for me. I think that's a cracking combination. I could eat that and drink that together.
Please. Yeah, the cheese is a little bit on the salty side, as you say. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And salt is traditionally a friend of wine. So
yes.
That saltiness is definitely lifting the wine nicely. Wow.
That's a very good start.
Now, I've already managed to get through 1 glass of white wine, so that was definitely a good.
I was a bit concerned today as to how my wine drinking appetite was going to be, as my wife and I spent most of yesterday drinking wine, but actually feeling pretty good, so I'm ready to go again. We tried, rather than going out for the evening, we went out for lunch instead, and that meant that we had much longer sleep time to get rid of the hangover.
Very good.
Right, let's move on to the second cheese we'll have on this then, which is the Yorkshire Fiore. So this, as I mentioned earlier, is another cheese made by Mario Oleanos up he's in Otley, not far from Leeds.
Yeah.
And we had his Leeds Blue, I think, a few episodes back.
We did, yes.
Which was a good one. This is his 3 to 4 month aged pecorino. Which again, you're going to get some nice saltiness with this.
Yeah. That's cracking. So if you didn't tell me this was from Leeds, I'd never guessed this was an English cheese.
No, it's really good. As he sort of developed his cheese making and increased his capacity, he's been able to start laying down cheeses for longer periods of time. I think initially he was in that sort of bit of a catch-22 that his Pecorino Fresco and the Leeds Blue he was making were aged for about 30 days, which is great because for him he can turn his milk into cheese, into money quite rapidly. The demand for those was such that he didn't really have he didn't have the space either. His original cheese making setup was in the back of his house to put some to one side to mature on, but now he's moved out to Otley to a more purpose-built facility. He has the space, and he's been, you know, aging on. I believe he's got some that he's going to bring out that'll be sort of a 12-month mature version.
Wow.
So these are, this is sheep's milk again, as pecorino as you'd expect. And he rubs the outside of this cheese with olive oil about once a week.
Yeah.
And the cheeses are sort of, most cheeses when they mature and they're cared for, they're turned over so that gravity doesn't have too much of an effect on them.
Yeah.
And they will brush them down to make sure, to manage the rind formation on the outside.
Yeah.
But with this one, he finds he brushes it with olive oil, and it adds a little bit, particularly near the rind, it does add a little bit of some olive oily texture to it.
One thing I noticed on it, especially for pecorino, the rind is not too overdeveloped.
Yeah.
And you can see this lovely colour gradation coming in. So, you know, sometimes in a pecorino you can have quite a thick, hard rind on them. This one doesn't. Yeah,
it's really, actually, onto the camera there, it's really, not sure what focus on that, but it's, there we go. Yeah, it's a very thin rind. Really nice cheese.
That is a nice cheese. With the white wine, they're not really doing much for each other. They're not really doing much against each other either. The wine still tastes the same. The cheese still tastes the same. They're not really.
They're not changing anything, are they really? Oh.
They're not mixing. they're in the same vicinity, but they're not talking to each other.
Which is not a surprise, because the wine's speaking French and the cheese is speaking Italian. So they should be able to, yeah, and as you'd expect, they get along.
Yeah.
But they're never going to really communicate at a high level. I'm expecting good things of this with the red.
Right.
But we'll work our way through the order.
Yeah, this should naturally be a friend of the red. Let's see. Especially as they traditionally come from a similar area.
Absolutely. So we switch across to cheese number 3, the Darling Blue. So this has got this wonderful sort of black rind to it. Real beautiful thing, and a very sort of buttery yellow paste on the inside. This is cow's milk from Northumberland, from maybe the Maxwell family at Doddington Dairy in the north of Northumberland. They've been making cheeses since 1950. They've got a herd of 400 cows that they use to get their milk from. And Maggie, who's the head cheesemaker there, she makes cheese, and they have a range of cheeses. This is one of them. And her brother, one of her brothers looks after the cows, and her other brother, Neil, makes ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're ever up in Northumberland, if you see Doddington's ice cream, definitely try it, because it's absolutely fabulous. The cheeses are great too as well. So the name of the cheese, Darling Blue, it takes its name from a lady called Grace Darling, who was a bit of a local hero or heroine up in that part of the world, in the Farne Islands, where she rescued some sailors who were shipwrecked in a storm, and she rowed out single-handedly in a rowboat and rescued loads of people at a time when everyone was standing on the shore going, well, they're all going to die, aren't they? She was the one who jumped out and saved lots of people. So she's a bit of a legend up there.
Oh, wow. So she's honoured with her own cheese now. She's
honoured with her own cheese, indeed, yes. So this is going to have nice salty notes again. It's quite mellow. It's not the strongest blue on the block. But it's, as I mentioned before, one of my team will sort of campaign to get it back on their counter, and I can see and taste why. It's a really nice blue.
Yeah, I like that. So, because when you see it with this beautiful black skin, and you can see, I'm assuming the molds, they put rods through there in order to try and get the mold to go.
That's right, yeah.
Or whatever it is they use. So I was expecting it to be much more overpowered by the mold, but the balance is huge. There's still quite a nice butteriness.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah, cheese is it's a harder blue. Some of them fall apart, but this one, the cheese itself is sort of still, although it's hard, it's still reasonably softish, and it's got a beautiful buttery texture and flavour to it, matched to this lovely lovely subtle moldiness in it.
Yeah, and looks are definitely deceiving, as you say. From first appearances, you might think it'd be quite strong, quite aggressive, but
No.
There it does with the wine.
That's quite interesting.
It's changing things there, isn't it?
That's quite interesting. So it definitely, you definitely start to get some more flavors coming through. For the wine, I think the acidity gets softened quite a lot, and you start to feel a lot more fruit coming through. Particularly that sort of green apple citrus flavor coming through.
Yeah, it is. It's amplifying that. It's lovely.
Yeah. And for the cheese, the cheese stays quite consistent. Maybe it sort of brings forward some of the flavor from the blue elements of the cheese.
But we've spoken about this before, haven't we? That I think in this case, the cheese is the platform that the wine is sitting on to be elevated.
Yes, yes. And it's always one of those things with blue cheese. You know, do you think, is it going to work or not? And in the past, I mean, I seem to remember, I can't remember whether it was the Leeds Blue or something else, where we had it with the aged Riesling, and it was just it was a fantastic combination. Yeah. This wine, being a little bit more acidic, not having those sort of notes of honey, I didn't know how it was going to work with the blue, but I'd quite happily have those two together. Yeah,
it works. I think I would be fairly happy with these three as a cheese board with this wine.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah. What a lovely cheese, though.
It is. It's really very Moorish indeed. There won't be much of this left by the end of this recording, I have to say.
No. You know what? And also, given in our house, we've traditionally gone for a nice block of Stilton at Christmas. I'd be tempted to supplement it for that this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice alternative. This is what we certainly find in the run-up. We've got the run-up to Christmas coming fairly soon, that we have a lot of demand for Stilton in the shop, but we do get people that, like yourself, will say, well, no, actually, let's go not Stilton.
Yes.
People, you still want to have a nice piece of blue cheese there at Christmas, of course you do. But yeah, this is a really good alternative.
Right then, that was great. So let's move on to the red.
Yeah, so let's go around to the reds.
2013. So you can see in the colour, starting to get a little bit of garnet in there. It's not so much ruby anymore, more garnet coming through. On the nose, you've got some of those Sauvignon characteristics that you get through. You can smell that green pepper. There's a few other things going on as well. Quite a lot of red and black fruit. So there's sort of red plums, black plums as well, bit of blackberry, black cherry, black currant, and it's the usual thing you'd expect from that Bordeaux blend. There's with 4 grapes in there in this case. There's a lot of different things coming through that you'll smell. Maybe even a bit of strawberry in there as well on the red fruit side.
On these blends, do the grapes go in an equal proportion, or do they vary the proportions to get a balance on the flavours?
So in any particular vintage, it will be the same proportion, but the proportion will change each year, and that's that's one of the reasons they make a blend. So if you think about Bordeaux, traditionally, Cabernet Sauvignon needs a bit more heat than Merlot to ripen fully. So in a cool year, your wine is probably going to be more Merlot than Cabernet Sauvignon, because you're going to struggle to get good grapes out of your Cabernet. And so because of that, because it's a cooler year, it'll be lighter anyway. But with more Merlot, it'll be a softer wine, more plummy, less herbaceous, less black fruit, less blackcurrant in particular. And then in a warmer year, when the Cab Sauv comes through more, you may want to use more Cab Sauv than Merlot. The blend you might move the blend a little bit more that way. And that way you are going to get more of those Cabernet characteristics, more of that herbaceousness, more black fruit, a little bit less plummy, a little less, not quite as soft, and more structure that you're going to get from Cab Sauv. So, you know, and there's always this. I've heard people say you don't get bad wines from Bordeaux anymore. I think that's not necessarily true, but what you get is you get different wines each year. They make a good wine for that vintage. Whereas if you go to Burgundy and you're dealing just purely with Pinot Noir, in a warm year, you get a very different wine from a cool year. And, you know, and some people might turn around and say, well, actually, those cool year wines aren't that great. I think, you know, maybe that's a bit of an over exaggeration, but there's just more for the more to play with for a winemaker when you're making a blend, to try and make sure you're putting out something that you're happy with.
Yeah.
Anyway, so final thing on the nose, 2013. So there's a little bit of bottle age in there. It will have spent some time in barrel as well. You can smell some characteristics of the oak. There is a little bit of vanilla. A little bit of spice coming through, but you're starting to get those tertiary flavors as well. A little bit of dried fruit. The fruit's sort of starting to smell like dried fruit. A little bit of tobacco almost. Forest floor. To me, there's a little bit of cigar box smell there, which is a classic for Bordeaux, and you're getting it here on this wine as well. So on the mouth, let's see how it feels. Yeah, so that on the mouth, when drinking that, you can start to feel that bottle age. There's still some good acidity, as you'd expect with Cabernet Sauvignon. Like all Sauvignons, it holds on to its acidity. The tannins that would have been there if you'd had this as a young wine, you know, there would have been some big tannins there from the Cabernet Sauvignon in particular. They've softened, and I don't know whether it's because I've been eating a bit of cheese, but you can hardly feel them. They are there if you move around. But they're not really fighting the way they would in a younger wine. But it's the flavors of the fruit. It's not fresh fruit anymore. It feels more more cooked fruit in a way, more dried and cooked fruit in there. So you know, not the fresh. If you like your wines young and fresh, you're probably not going to like this one. It's probably spent. I like them when they've moved on to this stage.
It's nice, yeah. It's kind of, I'm sort of imagining kind of fruitcake kind of vibes with it.
Yes, yeah.
I think this would pair quite nicely with like a Wensdale or a Lancashire or something like that, I think, in terms of those kind of fruit vibes.
Yes.
But we haven't any of those today, so we go with what we do have.
We can try that, but we can
try that another day. That's all good. All good learning.
With my cheese, I would, when red wines and cheese can be problematic, but I think if you are going to try red wine with the cheese, having one that's a little bit more mature and has moved on to those more cooked fruit, dried fruit flavors, less fresh, probably going to be a better move.
I would agree, because I've done pairings with some of the younger, fresher reds, as you were describing, and you can end up with a real nasty, almost car crash in your mouth of sort of acidity and bitterness, which is just really not good at all.
Yes.
Or at the very best, the wine can just march over the cheese because it's just got that juiciness to it that just demands attention.
Yeah, and leaves you with just the tannin sitting there going, oh, I don't like the wine so much anymore. Right, let's move on and try this with the Chaource first of all. So I must admit, for this, I am not expecting great things, but let's see.
Well, let's see what happens. This is part of the fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it's part of the fun. I'm expecting more as we move on to the harder cheeses.
It's bringing out something in the cheese.
It's not what I was expecting. I could live with that.
I thought at first that the cheese was going to get a bit lost, but actually,
yeah,
all right.
I mean, soft cheeses and red wines are not supposed to go, but I think there's that little saltiness in the cheese. There's enough there for it to give that red wine a little lift. I think the red wine not having so much tannin and not so much of this fresh fruit, we're not getting the car crash you talked about earlier.
No.
We're being left with those nice jammy fruits.
It's really quite pleasant.
Yeah, it's not what I was expecting at all.
So we're always a good thing in my world. It's how we come up with something that's beyond expectation.
Wow. Chaource is really trying to run away with me now. Almost strain it. Yeah, it really does leave you with that. Yeah, it really leaves you with just the fruit in the wine. It just brings that forward. It's doing the same thing it did for the white wine, just getting the white wine to elevate and show its fruit more.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's the salt. The key to it is the saltiness.
Yes.
It's just working really well with both of those wines. You just give them a little bit extra.
Yeah.
But the cheese has got enough about it as well. It's not getting lost in the mix.
No. And it just goes to show you those rules that people talk about, soft cheese and red wine not going, can be broken.
They can be. And we're always the sort of thing we've talked about this before. There's sort of that general perception that you have to have red wine with cheese, full stop, or red wine with blue cheeses and strong cheeses and whites with softs. Yeah, things work like like we say, maybe the Sancerre with the goat's cheese, or champagne with something like a Longa or something like that. Blueberry wine, this Chailloux will probably work well with a champagne or a sparkling wine, especially as it's from the Champagne region. It's that sort of whole grows together, goes together thing.
Yes. Now you've put an idea in my head that I'm going to have to try at some point.
Go for it. What is it?
Trying this with champagne. Trying the Chailloux with champagne.
Yeah.
Because I will have to confess at this point that I've never tried cheese with champagne ever.
Oh, well, there we go. Well, maybe there's a future episode right there. We can do some sparkling wines and some cheeses.
Yes.
That could work really well.
Right. So
this is the one that I expect should work the best.
Yeah, so this is now getting into classic territory for red wines. Good hard cheeses and red wines. Let's try it. So already, just having the cheese between after the Chailloux and having had the red wine coating my mouth, I'm starting to get a little bit more flavour from the cheese. So I'm hoping that when I have the glass of wine afterwards, you can see the two work together. Let's see. Yes, I like that. That does what I'd expect. I expected that. You've got this beautiful hard cheese, and it's giving the wine. I don't know how it's doing it, but the cheese it's bringing out a little bit more flavour from the cheese. Not any new flavours, just more of what's there. With the red wine, it's similar to the Chailloux. The saltiness of the cheese is just elevating the wine a lot, and you're getting a bag full of fruit coming through, and it's almost making it taste sweet in a way. And this is a nice dry wine, nice acidic wine, and it's the acidity's gone, and it's just giving you those fruits, those lovely ripe fruits that you've got with this mature wine. Which I'm getting real mouthfuls of fruit now.
You said at the start, the wine by itself is just kind of the fruitiness is quite mellow, but it's kind of like CPR for the wine to jolt that fruit back into life.
And there's so many different fruits as well. They're all there. There's I don't know about you, but I can get black currants, blackberries, cherries, black cherries in particular.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's a few red fruits as well there, strawberries, red plums. Awful lot going on.
The whole fruit salad going on right now.
And then that herbaceousness that's sitting in the background. That pepperiness is still there in the background, but it's just dialed back a bit.
Yeah. Very good.
So how are we doing? Right, blue cheese time. Now, this is going to be interesting. I don't usually expect blue cheese and red wine to be friends, but we know that blue cheese and wines like port can be friends. So with a mature wine, let's see how it works.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
I'm not necessarily buying that one. It's not a car crash.
No, it's just not. It's not setting the world on fire for me.
No, I can still taste the cheese. The cheese tastes the same as it does by itself. The wine, the red wine's not disappearing. But I think there's an element of, it's not going well with the blue part of the cheese, but the salt is kind of rescuing the red wine a little bit. So it's you're not getting all this fruit, all the fruit suddenly arriving in your palate, but it's not disappeared either. So it's leaving it. It's not really making me walk away going, wow.
No, and I dug a bit out of the cheese that doesn't have the blue veining in it. And it's just, there's nothing really changing at all.
No.
So,
no.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay though. I was expecting more of a car crash. So let's see. So we've been round. What's your vote for your favourite pairing there?
I think for me, it's the Chaource has been the star of the show on both for me. And I would say, actually, the most interesting would be with the red. It was really nice with the Sancerre, but I think with the red, that's just interesting revelation and good combination of the day for me. How about you?
I thought I buy what you're saying completely. The Chaource and the red was a surprise for me. I wasn't expecting that to work at all. And but I'm going to have to go with the Sauvignon Blanc and the Chaource. I thought that was it. Just the way it presented.
Yeah.
Lifted that white wine up, made it feel much more fruity, much bigger wine than it actually is. Worked. Having said that, with these wines, if you were giving me this cheese pairing and a glass of either of those wines, I'd be very happy with this as to while away the hours.
I would agree.
I'd probably still go for the white over the red with 3, but the red with them is good too.
Yeah, I think I'm broadly in agreement with you on that. I think if I was to have these 3 on the board with one of these wines, I would go with the white. Definitely. Yeah. It just has the 3 just connected with it in a better way.
Yes.
So yeah, it's very good. But having said that, there's nothing that's not to slight the red at all. It's a beautiful wine. I think that's maybe one just to drink by itself, or just with a big lump of the Fiore.
I think this wine for me, this is in front of the fire on a winter evening by itself quite often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas I found another friend for this white wine now. So we normally have this with a bit of fish. Having it with these cheeses and seeing how it's worked with cheeses I didn't expect it to work with, the blue and the Fiore is
yeah. That's good. It's good to find. That's what I love about this, is finding things that you wouldn't necessarily think of, wouldn't necessarily go. I am really interested, and I may well do this actually, because there's obviously plenty of this red left. I may well just grab a chunk of Lancashire or something from the counter tomorrow and just try it with a bit of that and see if those fruitcake flavours work well with it, and see how it goes. I will report back on that.
Let me know how that goes, and then maybe for a future episode we can get that cheese along. And well, not necessarily the same wine, but I've got plenty of other wines that might fill in for that and see how they
keep going in that direction.
Yeah,
well, this is where we start to tend gradually towards our Christmassy themed episodes of things that are going to go well at Christmas time. So, but I love the idea of doing something with sparkling wines and soft cheeses as well.
Yes, we have to do that.
Yeah. So, and if anyone watching has any suggestions of cheeses and wines they'd like us to try, then please drop something in the comments. And if you liked what we've talked about today, please share it and subscribe. And we will be back with another episode in a few weeks' time.
Great. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Enjoy it. Thanks, Ian. Yeah. And we'll see everybody soon.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.